Subscribe to Story Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. Homecoming Shadows. The C-130 transport's engines wound down as Sean Hansen stepped onto American soil for the first time in 12 months. Fort Bragg's familiar sights and sounds should have brought comfort, but something felt wrong. The letters from his ex-wife Pamela had stopped coming 3 months ago, and his daughter Emma's video calls had become increasingly sparse and awkward. Sean Hansen wasn't just any soldier returning home. At 34, he was a decorated Special Forces operator with 2 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star. His specialty was psychological operations and reconnaissance, skills that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. Standing 6'2" with steel-gray eyes and a presence that commanded respect, Sean had earned his reputation as someone you didn't want as an enemy. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was seeing Emma. The drive to Pamela's house in Fayetteville took 45 minutes through familiar Carolina backroads. Sean had bought that house 7 years ago when Emma was born, back when he still believed his marriage to Pamela Barr could survive the demands of military life. Pamela, a nurse from a small town outside Charlotte, had been beautiful, ambitious, and impatient with Sean's long deployments. Their divorce was finalized just before his latest deployment, but they'd agreed Emma would stay with Pamela in the house Sean continued to pay for. As Sean pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. The lawn was overgrown, paint peeling from the shutters he'd installed himself. Pamela's car was gone, but a rusted pickup truck sat in what used to be his spot. Empty beer bottles littered the front porch. Sean knocked on the door. No answer. He tried Emma's bedroom window. Also no response. A neighbor, Mrs. Charlotte Taylor, peered over from her garden. "Sean, you're back." She hurried over, worry creasing her elderly features. "I've been so concerned about little Emma." "What do you mean concerned?" Charlotte glanced toward the house nervously. "Pamela married that Dennis Johns fellow about 4 months ago. He drinks a lot. And there's been shouting. Lots of shouting. I called child services twice, but..." Sean's jaw tightened. "Where is Emma now?" "I haven't seen her in 2 days. The screaming was terrible the other night. Police came around midnight." Sean's training kicked in. Something was very wrong. He thanked Charlotte and began systematically searching the property. Behind the house, near the old tool shed, he heard it, a faint whimpering coming from under the front porch. "Emma? Baby, it's Daddy." The whimpering stopped. Then, barely audible, "Daddy?" Sean's heart clenched as he crawled under the porch. What he found would haunt him forever. Emma, his beautiful 7-year-old daughter, was huddled in the dirt, her blonde hair matted with dried blood from a gash across her forehead. Her left eye was swollen shut, and finger-shaped bruises marked her small arms. "Daddy, please help," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Mom's new husband got drunk, and he did this. He said if I told anyone, he'd do worse." Sean's world went red. His hand shook as he gently lifted Emma, his special forces training warring with his father's rage. Someone had hurt his little girl. Someone was going to pay. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. Nobody will ever hurt you again." As Sean carried Emma to his truck, his mind was already working. Dennis Johns had made the biggest mistake of his life. And Sean Hansen was exactly the wrong person to cross. Chapter 2. The Network Awakens. The Fort Bragg Medical Center was a place Sean knew too well from his own injuries. But seeing Emma on the examination table was torture beyond anything he'd experienced in combat. Dr. Elizabeth Watts, a pediatrician and family friend, worked with gentle efficiency while Sean provided what little information he could. "The injuries are consistent with physical abuse," Dr. Watts said quietly, her examination complete. The head wound needed 12 stitches. There are older bruises on her ribs and back. "Sean, this has been going on for a while." Emma had fallen asleep from exhaustion and medication. Sean sat beside her bed, his hand gently stroking her hair, his mind calculating. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Heard you were back. Coffee?" "Oh, R. Oliver Russell, his old team sergeant, now retired and running a private security firm in Raleigh. If Sean needed anything done off the books, Oliver was the man to call. Their unit had operated under a simple code: You watch my back, I watch yours. Forever. Sean typed back, Fort Bragg Medical. Room 314. Bring Justin and Barry if available. 40 minutes later, 3 men in civilian clothes entered Emma's room. Oliver Russell, built like a linebacker with prematurely gray hair, had been Sean's right-hand man for 5 years. Justin Myers, the team's former communications specialist, was slight and bookish but could hack into anything with a power cord. Barry Yu, their former demolitions expert, now worked as a contractor specializing in problem-solving. They took one look at Emma's condition and understood. "Tell us about Dennis Johns," Oliver said simply. Sean pulled up everything he'd learned. Dennis Johns, 38, was a construction worker with a history of bar fights and drunk driving arrests. He'd married Pamela Barr 4 months ago after a whirlwind romance that began while Sean was deployed. Johns had no prior record of domestic violence, but that meant nothing. "Where's he now?" Barry asked, his voice deadly quiet. Barry had his own daughter, safe with his ex-wife in California. "Pamela texted me an hour ago. Said Johns is working a job in Asheville until Thursday." 3 days. Justin was already typing on his laptop. Dennis Johns, 1247 Morrison Avenue, apartment 3B. Previous addresses in Tennessee and Virginia. 2 DUI arrests, multiple bar fights, fired from his last 3 jobs for showing up drunk. "What about Pamela?" Oliver asked. Sean's expression hardened. She knew. Had to know. There's no way this level of abuse happens without the mother being aware. The men exchanged glances. They'd all seen the results of child abuse in war zones and knew the psychological damage it caused. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about every child who couldn't fight back. "We need to be smart about this," Sean said. "If we just make Johns disappear, Pamela gets Emma back, and nothing changes. We need to make sure Emma is safe permanently." "What are you thinking?" Oliver asked. Sean was quiet for a long moment, watching him asleep. When he spoke, his voice was ice. "I'm thinking Dennis Johns is about to have a very bad week. And Pamela is going to learn what happens when you put a man like that near my daughter." Dr. Watts returned with discharge papers. "Emma can go home, but she needs to be monitored for signs of concussion." "And Sean, I'm required to report this to Child Services." "Do it," Sean said. "But Emma's coming home with me tonight. I've got temporary custody papers being expedited through JAG." As they prepared to leave, Sean made one phone call to a number he'd memorized but never used. It rang twice. "This is Ash. Terrence Ash, former Delta Force, now working for a government contractor that officially didn't exist. If you needed something done that couldn't be traced back, Ash was your man. It's Hanson. I need a favor. Name it. I'm texting you a location. 24-hour surveillance, full background workup, and when the target returns, we need to have a conversation. Consider it done. You okay?" Sean looked at Emma, finally sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. "I will be." Chapter 3. The chess match begins. Sean's temporary quarters on base had been converted into a fortress of comfort for Emma. He'd requisitioned a cot for himself and given her the bed, surrounding her with stuffed animals from the PX and every book he could find. For 2 days, she barely spoke, jumping at every sound and clinging to Sean whenever he moved more than arm's length away. On Wednesday morning, Emma finally began talking. "He started hitting me after the first month," she said quietly, coloring in a book while Sean made her breakfast. "Mom tried to stop him at first, but then he hit her too. She said if I was good and didn't make him angry, maybe he'd stop." Sean forced his voice to remain calm. "What made him angry?" "Everything. If I talked too loud, or if I cried, or if I asked for Mom. He said I was a spoiled brat because my daddy was a soldier." Emma looked up with her one good eye. "He said you didn't love me because you went away." Sean knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. "Emma, listen to me very carefully. I love you more than anything in this world. I went away to keep you safe, to keep America safe. But I should have been here to protect you from him. That's on me, not you. Are you going to make him go away?" The question hung in the air. Sean looked into his daughter's eyes, and saw intelligence beyond her years. Emma had always been sharp, perceptive. She deserved the truth, or as much of it as she could handle. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again. Promise. Promise. That afternoon, while Emma napped, Sean met with his lawyer from JAG. Major Viola Rice was a pit bull in uniform who'd helped Sean navigate his divorce. The custody order is temporary, she explained. Pamela can't contest it, but given Emma's condition and the CPS investigation, you've got strong grounds for full custody. The problem is John's. What about him? He's not Emma's legal guardian, so technically he has no rights here. But Pamela does, and if she chooses to stay with him. She won't, Sean said with certainty. Major Rice raised an eyebrow. You seem sure about that. Pamela's many things, but she's not stupid. She married John's for security, emotional and financial. When that security disappears, so will her loyalty. Sean's phone buzzed. A text from Terrence Ash. Package delivered to Asheville. Wrapping up early. Sean's blood went cold. John's was coming home a day ahead of schedule. He immediately called Oliver. Change of plans. John's is heading back tonight. We're ready. Justin's been monitoring his phone. He's been calling Pamela all day, threatening to teach that soldier boy a lesson when he gets back. Where's Pamela? At her sister's house in Charlotte with a packed bag. Seems she's having second thoughts about her choice in husbands. Sean felt a grim satisfaction. Pamela was nothing if not a survivor. She'd sensed which way the wind was blowing and was distancing herself accordingly. What's the plan? Oliver asked. Sean had been thinking about this for 48 hours. Direct action would be satisfying, but ultimately counterproductive. John's needed to be dealt with, but it had to look natural, accidental. Sean's team had perfected such operations overseas. John's drinks. A lot. Barry, you still have contacts in the accident reconstruction business. My brother-in-law Cole works for the state police. Why? Tonight, Dennis Johns drives home drunk from his favorite bar, loses control on Highway 74's mountain curves, and goes off the road into Hickory Creek Ravine. Tragic accident. Single vehicle, no witnesses. That's a hell of a curve, Barry mused. Easy to lose control, especially after a few drinks. Justin, I need you to monitor John's phone and credit cards. Track his exact movements. Oliver, we need eyes on his truck, mechanical issues that might contribute to an accident. Brake line problems, steering issues. What about you? Oliver asked. Sean looked toward Emma's room, where she was finally sleeping without nightmares for the first time in months. I'm going to be here, with Emma, watching a movie and eating popcorn. Full alibi, multiple witnesses. The chess match had begun. Dennis Johns had hurt the wrong man's daughter, and Sean Hansen was about to show him what happened when you threatened a Special Forces operator's family. The beauty of the plan wasn't just its simplicity, it was that Johns would never see it coming. Chapter 4. The Trap Springs. Thursday evening arrived with an early autumn chill that seemed to mirror Sean's cold calculation. Emma was having her best day yet, laughing at cartoons and even asking for seconds at dinner. Sean had arranged for Charlotte Taylor to come over for a movie night. She was delighted to help and would serve as the perfect alibi witness. At 6 p.m., Justin's voice came through Sean's earpiece. John's just left the job site. He's hitting Murphy's Tavern first, just like every Thursday for the past 3 months. Murphy's Tavern was a dive bar on the outskirts of Asheville, exactly the kind of place where a man like Dennis Johns would drink away his paycheck and work up the courage to go home and take out his frustrations on whoever was available. How's his mood? Sean asked, stepping onto the porch where Emma couldn't hear. Pissed off. Called Pamela 6 times today, got voicemail every time. Called the house twice, no answer. He knows something's up. Perfect. Angry, drunk, and desperate men made fatal mistakes. Oliver's voice joined the conversation. Barry's in position. Truck's been modified. Brake lines will fail about 10 miles out from Murphy's, right where Highway 74 takes that sharp curve over Hickory Creek. Clean? Sean asked. As a whistle. Corrosion failure, consistent with age and poor maintenance. State police will chalk it up to negligent upkeep. Sean felt no guilt about what they were doing. Dennis Johns had beaten a 7-year-old child nearly unconscious. In Sean's mind, the man had forfeited his right to breathe the same air as inside. Emma was teaching Charlotte Taylor to play her favorite video game, their laughter floating through the house. This was what Sean was protecting: innocence, safety, the right of a child to grow up without fear. His phone rang. "Pamela." "Sean? Is Emma with you?" "She's safe," he said simply. "I need to see her. Dennis has been calling me all day, making threats. I think I made a mistake." "Where are you, Pamela?" "At my sister Diane's." "Sean, Dennis has been drinking more, and when he drinks, he gets—" She trailed off. "Violent," Sean finished. "I know. I've seen what he did to our daughter." Pamela started crying. "I didn't know it was that bad. He said he was just disciplining her, teaching her respect. I worked such long hours at the hospital, and when I got home, Emma never said anything. Because he threatened her. That's what abusers do, Pamela. They terrorize their victims into silence." Sean heard voices in the background. Pamela's sister Diane Hurst was telling her to stay put, not to go home tonight. "Is Emma okay?" Pamela asked. "She will be. But Pamela, listen to me carefully. Don't go home tonight. Don't take Dennis's calls. Just stay where you are." "Why?" "Sean, what are you?" Sean hung up. At 8:47 p.m., Justin's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Johns is leaving Murphy's. Blood alcohol is easily over 0.15 based on what he consumed. He's weaving already. Oliver, I see him. Truck's running rough. That's the brake fluid leaking. He won't make it past mile marker 12. Sean walked back inside, where Emma was beating Charlotte at her video game. He sat down beside them, pulling Emma close. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, looking up at him with concern that broke his heart. His 7-year-old daughter was worried about him when she should have been focused on healing. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Just thinking about how happy I am to be home with you." At 9:23 p.m., Barry's voice came through the earpiece. "Package delivered. Single vehicle accident, mile marker 12, Highway 74. No survivors." Sean closed his eyes briefly, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Dennis Johns would never hurt another child. His phone rang 5 minutes later. The caller ID showed Pamela's number. "Sean," she screamed. "Something's happened to Dennis. The police just called. They found his truck at the bottom of Hickory Creek Ravine. He's dead." Sean muted the phone for a moment, listening to Pamela's wails. When he unmuted it, his voice was carefully neutral. "That's terrible, Pamela. What did they say happened?" "They think he lost control on that sharp curve. He'd been drinking." She dissolved into sobs. "I'm sorry for your loss," Sean said, and meant it. He was sorry she'd chosen a man like Dennis Johns. Sorry she'd allowed him to hurt Emma. Sorry it had come to this. "They want me to identify the body tomorrow." "Sean, I can't handle this alone." "You'll be fine, Pamela. You're stronger than you think." Emma looked up at him with questioning eyes. Sean smoothed her hair gently. "What's wrong, Daddy?" "Nothing that concerns you, sweetheart. Just grown-up stuff." But even as Sean spoke the words, he knew this was far from over. Dennis Johns was dead, but Pamela was still Emma's mother. And Sean had learned something disturbing from Charlotte Taylor earlier. Dennis Johns might have been violent, but he hadn't been stupid. According to the neighbor, Johns had been asking questions about Sean's military service, about his special skills and his friends. Had Dennis Johns suspected something? Had he been planning his own form of revenge? Sean's instincts, honed by years of combat, were telling him to stay alert. The immediate threat was gone, but in his experience, eliminating one enemy often revealed others. Chapter 5: Unraveling Threads. 3 days after Dennis Johns' funeral, Sean discovered he'd underestimated his enemy. Emma was at her first therapy session with Dr. Morgan Gray, a child psychologist recommended by Dr. Watts, when Sean's phone rang. The caller ID showed the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department. "Mr. Hanson, this is Detective Marvin Good. I'd like to speak with you about Dennis Johns." Sean's training kicked in. Stay calm. Reveal nothing. Gather information. "Of course, Detective. How can I help? Could you come down to the station? Just routine questions about your ex-wife's husband." "I'm happy to help, but I should mention I barely knew the man. I've been deployed for the past 12 months. I understand. When would be convenient?" Sean agreed to meet that afternoon. After dropping Emma with Charlotte Taylor, he drove to the sheriff's department, his mind racing through possibilities. Had Barry made a mistake? Had someone seen something? Detective Marvin Good was a big man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd spent decades getting people to confess. His office was neat, organized, with photos of his own family prominently displayed. "Thanks for coming in, Mr. Hansen. First, let me say I'm sorry about what happened to your daughter. I have kids of my own." Sean nodded. "Thank you. It's been difficult." "I imagine so. Now, I'm investigating Dennis John's death. Routine in any single vehicle fatality. What can you tell me about John's?" "Honestly, almost nothing. I knew Pamela had remarried while I was deployed, but I never met him. The first time I saw evidence of him was when I found Emma injured." Detective Good made notes. "Your ex-wife never mentioned any problems? Drinking, violence?" "Pamela and I don't communicate much beyond issues concerning Emma. Our divorce was complicated." "When exactly did you return from deployment?" Sean provided dates, times, his travel orders from Fort Bragg. "Everything documented, everything clean." "Where were you Thursday night?" "The night Johns died. At home with Emma and a neighbor, Mrs. Charlotte Taylor. Emma was having nightmares about the abuse, so I stayed close." Detective Good nodded sympathetically, but Sean caught something in his expression, a flicker of skepticism. "Mr. Hansen, I have to ask this directly. You're special forces, correct? You have training in, well, various skills that most people don't possess." Sean's pulse quickened, but his voice remained steady. "I'm trained in infantry operations, yes. But detective, I was home with my daughter and a witness all evening." "I'm sure you were. But I've been doing this job for 26 years, and in my experience, when someone with your background has a problem like Dennis Johns, that problem tends to get solved efficiently." Sean met the detective's gaze steadily. "Are you accusing me of something, detective?" "Not all, but I am curious about a few things. John's brake lines failed catastrophically. Complete fluid loss right before that curve. Now, brake lines do fail, but usually there are warning signs. John's co-workers said he hadn't mentioned any problems with his truck." Sean shrugged. "I wouldn't know anything about that." Detective Good opened a file. "Here's what's interesting, though. 3 days before he died, Johns called his cousin in Tennessee. Said he was worried about that Special Forces ex-husband coming back and causing trouble. Said he was going to take care of it before it became a problem." Sean's blood chilled. Johns had been planning something. Johns also visited a gun store in Asheville on Monday. Bought a .45 pistol and a box of ammunition. Said he needed protection from someone who might be coming for him. The detective leaned forward. "Now, Mr. Hansen, that sounds like a man who was afraid. A man who knew he'd done something that might bring consequences. But here's what I can't figure out. If Johns was so worried about you, why didn't he try to contact you directly? Why didn't he call the police?" "Because he was planning to ambush me," Sean realized. Johns had figured out that beating Emma would bring retaliation, and he decided to strike first. "I have no idea what Dennis Johns was thinking," Sean said. "But detective, if he'd approached me directly, I would have referred him to my lawyer and suggested he turn himself into child services." "I'm sure you would have," Detective Good said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Just one more thing. John's cell phone records show he received a call at 6:15 p.m. Thursday evening. The call lasted 3 minutes. Then he left the bar immediately. Problem is, the call came from a burner phone we can't trace. Sean's training told him to end this conversation immediately, but cutting it short might raise more suspicions." "That is odd," he said. "Have you considered that Johns might have had other enemies? A man who beats children probably has other anger management issues." "Oh, we're looking into that too. But Mr. Hansen, in my experience, when you have a dead wife beater and a special forces soldier whose daughter was the victim, the connection tends to be pretty direct." Sean stood up. "Detective, if you have specific questions about my actions or whereabouts, I'm happy to answer them with my lawyer present. Otherwise, I should get back to my daughter. She's been through enough trauma." Detective Good also stood, extending his hand. "Of course. Thanks for your time. Just one more thing, though. You might want to know that Johns kept a journal. We found it in his apartment. Makes for interesting reading about his plans for dealing with you." Sean shook the detective's hand, his mind racing. A journal meant evidence. Possibly detailed evidence of John's intentions toward Emma and toward Sean himself. "I'd be interested in reading it, if it's relevant to Emma's case." "Oh, it is. Very relevant. We'll be in touch, Mr. Hanson. As Sean left the sheriff's department, he realized the chess game was far from over. Dennis Johns was dead, but he'd left behind a trail of evidence that might lead back to Sean's team. Worse, Johns had been planning his own attack, which meant if Sean hadn't acted first, Emma might have lost her father as well as her safety. But Detective Good was smart, experienced, and clearly suspicious. Sean needed to know exactly what was in that journal and what other evidence the police might have collected. Time to call in another favor. Chapter 6, Counterintelligence. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sean met Oliver Russell at a 24-hour diner outside Fayetteville. The kind of place where two military veterans could have a conversation without drawing attention. "We have a problem," Sean said without preamble. Oliver listened intently as Sean recounted his conversation with Detective Good. When Sean finished, Oliver was quiet for a long moment. "Johns was smarter than we gave him credit for," Oliver finally said. "He saw you coming from a mile away. The question is, how much evidence did he leave behind? And how much of it points to us? I'll have Justin do some digging into the police files, see what this journal actually says. But Sean, we need to talk about the bigger picture here." Sean raised an eyebrow. "Pamela," Oliver said. "She's the wild card in all this. She knows you, knows how you operate. If the police start pressing her about whether you might have been capable of eliminating Johns, Pamela won't say anything. She's not stupid. If she throws me under the bus, she loses any chance of getting Emma back." "You sure about that?" "Because from what I've observed, Pamela's primary loyalty is to Pamela. If she thinks cooperating with the police might get her out of trouble for neglecting Emma's abuse." Sean hadn't considered that angle. Pamela could position herself as another victim of John's manipulation, claim she was afraid to act, and offer Sean as the vengeful ex-husband to deflect blame from herself. "We need intelligence," Sean said. "I want to know what Pamela's telling her sister, what she's telling her friends, what she's telling anyone who'll listen." Oliver nodded. "I'll put someone on her." Quietly. "What about the detective?" "Detective Good is a problem. He's experienced, methodical, and he's got good instincts. He knows something's not right about John's death, but he doesn't have proof yet." Sean's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow? Same place as last time. Important news. T.A. Terrence Ash." Sean had forgotten about the surveillance request he'd made before John's death. "Change of plans," Sean told Oliver. "I need to meet with Ash tomorrow. He might have information we can use." The next morning, Sean drove to a small cafe in downtown Raleigh where he'd met Ash once before, years ago. Terrence Ash was already there, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall, old habits from their special operations days. Ash was Sean's age, but looked older, with the weathered appearance of someone who'd spent too many years in places that didn't officially exist. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. "You look good, Hanson. Fatherhood suits you. What do you have for me, Ash?" Ash slid a manila envelope across the table. "Everything you need to know about Dennis Johns, and a few things you probably don't want to know." Sean opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, and what appeared to be surveillance transcripts. "Johns was a piece of work," Ash said. 3 previous relationships, all ended with domestic violence complaints. He was good at picking women who were isolated, vulnerable, or had something to lose if they pressed charges. Sean flipped through photos of Johns with various women, all showing signs of abuse. "But here's the interesting part," Ash continued. "Johns wasn't just a drunk wife-beater. He was also a blackmailer." Sean looked up sharply. He had a side business collecting dirt on people, affair photos, drug use, financial improprieties. Small-town stuff mostly, but lucrative. He'd been pressuring 3 different men in Asheville for monthly payments. "How does this connect to Emma?" Ash pointed to a transcript. Johns kept detailed records of his activities, including his relationships. "According to this, he specifically targeted Pamela because of her connection to you." Sean's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Johns knew exactly who you were before he ever approached Pamela. Special forces, multiple deployments, decorated combat veteran. He saw Pamela as a way to get leverage over someone with your skills and connections." The implications hit Sean like a physical blow. Johns hadn't just abused Emma out of drunken rage. He'd heard her as part of a calculated plan to manipulate Sean. He was planning to blackmail me. Better than that, he was planning to force you to work for him. Johns had dreams of expanding his operation beyond small-town blackmail. He wanted military-grade surveillance, intimidation, and problem-solving services. Ash handed Sean another document. This is a list he kept of potential assets, military veterans with financial problems, legal troubles, or family members he could threaten. Sean scanned the list and recognized several names. Good soldiers who'd fallen on hard times after leaving the military. Johns was building a criminal network, Ash said, and he saw you as the cornerstone. Hurt your daughter, make you dependent on him for keeping her safe, and gradually leverage you into increasingly illegal activities. Sean felt sick. Emma's abuse hadn't been random violence. It had been the opening move in a larger game. There's more, Ash said grimly. Johns was also collecting information on your military service, your contacts, your capabilities. He'd been asking questions around Fayetteville for months, posing as someone interested in hiring veterans. Sean understood now why Detective Good had been suspicious. Johns had been gathering intelligence on Sean long before his return from deployment, which meant there might be a paper trail connecting Sean to John's death. What happened to all of John's records? Sean asked. That's the good news. Most of his blackmail files were stored electronically, and electronics can be problematic during police investigations. Hard drives fail, files get corrupted. Sean caught the implication. Ash had eliminated the evidence that could tie John's criminal activities to his death. What about the journal the detective mentioned? Ash smiled grimly. John's journal is real, but it's not what the detective thinks. It's mostly paranoid ramblings about you coming after him, which, ironically, makes it look like Johns was mentally unstable rather than evidence of a calculated plan. So we're clear. You're clear from John's angle. But Sean, you need to be careful about Pamela. Johns recorded some of their conversations, and she knew more about his business than she's letting on. Sean stared at the evidence spread across the table. Dennis Johns was dead, but his legacy of manipulation was still unfolding. And now Sean realized that Pamela might not be the passive victim he'd assumed. What do you need me to do? Ash asked. Sean gathered the documents, his mind already working through the implications. I need to know exactly how much Pamela knew about John's plans, and I need to know what she's telling the police. Because if Pamela had been complicit in John's scheme to manipulate Sean, then everything Sean thought he knew about his ex-wife and their custody battle was about to change dramatically. Chapter 7. The Web Untangles. 2 days later, Sean's carefully constructed world began to collapse. Emma was playing in Charlotte Taylor's backyard while Sean prepared dinner when Oliver Russell arrived unannounced, his face grim. We need to talk, Oliver said. Now. They stepped onto the porch, out of Emma's earshot. Justin cracked Pamela's phone and email accounts. Oliver said without preamble, You need to see this. He handed Sean a tablet displaying email exchanges between Pamela and Dennis Johns, dating back 8 months, for months before they were supposedly married. Sean read in growing horror. Pamela to Johns. Sean deploys next month. That gives us almost a year to set everything up. Johns to Pamela. You sure he'll take the bait? What if he just takes the kid and runs? Pamela to Johns. You don't know Sean like I do. He's got a hero complex. Hurt Emma. Make it look like you're out of control, and he'll come charging in to save the day. Then we use his reaction to show he's unstable, dangerous. I get full custody, you get your military contacts, everybody wins. Sean felt the world tilt sideways. His ex-wife had orchestrated Emma's abuse. There's more, Oliver said quietly. The next email exchange was even worse. Johns to Pamela. The kid keeps asking for her daddy. Maybe we don't need to hit her so much. Pamela to Johns. Dennis, focus on the goal. The worse Emma looks when Sean gets back, the more justified his reaction will be. We need him to do something violent, something that proves he's dangerous. A few bruises won't be enough. Johns to Pamela. What if I go too far? Pamela to Johns. You won't. Emma's tougher than she looks. Just make sure it's documented. Photos, hospital records. We need evidence of what Sean's capable of when someone threatens his daughter. Sean's hand shook as he read. Pamela had used Emma as bait, allowing her to be brutalized to manipulate Sean into a violent response they could use against him. They were planning to frame me, Sean said, his voice hollow. Gets worse. Check the final exchange, sent the day before Johns died. Pamela to Johns. Sean's back. He found Emma exactly like we planned. Now we wait for him to make his move. Johns to Pamela. What if he's smarter than we thought? What if he doesn't take the bait? Pamela to Johns. Then we escalate. You make another drunken mistake with Emma. Make sure Sean catches you in the act. No father could walk away from that without reacting. Johns to Pamela. And if he kills me? Pamela to Johns. Then you become the victim, and Sean goes to prison for murder. I get Emma. I get his military pension, and I get to play the grieving widow. Either way, we win. Sean sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the betrayal. His ex-wife had been willing to let their daughter be beaten unconscious to secure a payday. There's one more thing, Oliver said. Pamela's been in contact with Detective Good. Not just answering questions, she's been feeding him information about your military background, your contacts, your violent tendencies. She's building a case against me. Exactly. And here's the kicker. She's also been in touch with John's cousin in Tennessee, the one who received that phone call about you. They're coordinating stories. Sean's tactical mind began working through the implications. Pamela and John's family were constructing a narrative that painted Sean as an unstable veteran who murdered Dennis Johns in cold blood. The abuse of Emma would be repositioned as Sean's motive for murder rather than John's crime. What's our exposure? Sean asked. Legally, if they can prove you killed Johns, you're looking at life in prison. Tactically, if this gets out, it destroys your military career, your custody of Emma, everything. Sean stood up, his mind clearing as his training took over. This was war, and Pamela had just revealed herself as the enemy. Oliver, I need you and the team to disappear. Clean break, no contact. If this goes south, I don't want you guys caught in the crossfire. Like hell. We knew the risks when we signed on. This isn't Afghanistan, Oliver. This is American courts, American prisons. You have families to think about. Oliver's expression hardened. So do you. Emma needs her father, and I'll be damned if we let that manipulative bitch take her away from you. Sean looked through the window at Emma, who was laughing as Charlotte pushed her on a swing. His daughter had no idea that the mother she'd been asking about had orchestrated her own abuse. What do you want to do? Oliver asked. Sean considered his options. He could run, take Emma and disappear into the network of military contractors and former special operations personnel who lived off the grid. But that would mean Emma growing up without stability, without a normal life. He could fight the charges legally, but Pamela and John's family had been building their case for months. They had evidence, witnesses, a compelling narrative of the dangerous veteran driven to murder. Or he could do what he did best, turn the enemy's plan against them. I want to know everything about Pamela's finances, her relationship with John's family, her communications with Detective Good, Sean said. And I want to know if she has any other skeletons in her closet. You thinking about going on the offensive? Sean smiled grimly. Pamela thinks she knows me, thinks she can predict how I'll react. But she made one crucial mistake. What's that? She assumes I still care about her enough to hold back. She's about to learn the difference between fighting a soldier and fighting a father whose child has been betrayed. Inside the house, Emma called out, Daddy, come push me on the swing. Sean waved to his daughter, then turned back to Oliver. Pamela wanted to see what I'm capable of when someone threatens Emma. She's about to find out. Chapter 8, The Counterattack. Sean's counteroffensive began at dawn the next morning. While Emma slept peacefully in her bed for the first time in months, Sean was in his makeshift command center, Charlotte Taylor's dining room table, surrounded by files, laptops, and secure communication devices. Oliver, Justin, and Barry sat around the table like a military planning session, because that's exactly what it was. Status report, Sean said. Justin opened his laptop. I've been digging into Pamela's finances for the past 6 hours. She's broke, not just low on money, actively drowning in debt. He pulled up bank records. She's got 3 credit cards maxed out, student loans in default, and she's 2 months behind on the house payments. That nursing job barely covers her minimum expenses. So she needed Johns for his income, Barry observed. More than that, Justin continued. She also took out a life insurance policy on Johns 3 months ago. $500,000, double indemnity for accidental death. Sean felt a cold satisfaction. She was planning to kill him all along. Gets better. I found text exchanges between Pamela and John's cousin, Franklin Fry. They're not just coordinating their stories about you. They're planning to split the insurance money. Oliver leaned forward. That's conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. And murder, Sean added. If we can prove Pamela sabotaged John's truck. Barry shook his head. We sabotaged the truck. If we try to pin that on Pamela, we're implicating ourselves. Sean had already thought of that. We don't need to prove she killed Johns. We just need to prove she planned to kill him, which makes her the primary suspect instead of me. Justin pulled up more files. I also hacked into Detective Good's case files. He's got a theory about you, but no physical evidence. No fingerprints on the truck, no witnesses, no communication records between you and Johns. His case is entirely circumstantial. What about the journal? I got a copy. It's mostly paranoid rambling, but there are some entries that could be interpreted as John's planning to hurt Emma again. Could support a self-defense claim if it comes to that. Sean studied the evidence. Pamela's plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Manipulate Sean into killing Johns, then use that murder to destroy Sean's life while collecting the insurance money. But she made several crucial errors. She underestimated how thoroughly we'd investigate, Sean said, and she left a digital trail connecting her to the conspiracy. What's the play? Oliver asked. Sean stood up, his decision made. We're going to give Detective Good a better suspect than me. 2 hours later, Sean walked into the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department and asked to speak with Detective Good. Mr. Hansen, the detective said, gesturing to his office. I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon. I've been thinking about our conversation, Sean said, and I've realized there are some things you should know about Dennis Johns and my ex-wife. Detective Good's eyebrows rose. I'm listening. Sean handed him a folder. These are financial records showing that Pamela took out a life insurance policy on Johns 3 months ago. $500,000. The detective opened the folder, his expression sharpening as he read. She also has significant debts that John's death would resolve, Sean continued. And I've discovered that she's been in communication with John's family members about dividing the insurance proceeds. Where did you get this information? I hired a private investigator, Sean lied smoothly. After our last conversation, I realized I needed to understand what was really happening between Pamela and Johns. Detective Good studied the documents. This is interesting, but it doesn't rule you out as a suspect. No, but it gives you a better one. Detective, what if I told you that Pamela and Johns planned Emma's abuse specifically to manipulate me into a violent response? Sean handed him printouts of the email exchanges Justin had obtained. Detective Good read in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. These could be fabricated, he said finally. They could be, but you can verify them through the email servers, can't you? And you can check the dates against John's work schedule, Pamela's hospital shifts, Emma's medical records. The detective was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Hansen, if these emails are genuine, they suggest your ex-wife conspired to have your daughter abused. Yes, it is. And detective, a woman capable of that is certainly capable of murdering her co-conspirator to cover her tracks. Sean leaned forward. You said Johns bought a gun because he was afraid of me. But what if he wasn't afraid of me at all? What if he was afraid of Pamela? What if he realized she was planning to double-cross him? Detective Good was taking notes now, his investigative instincts fully engaged. There's one more thing, Sean said. John's truck. You said the brake lines failed catastrophically. I did some research. That model truck has a known defect in the brake line routing. It passes right under the driver's seat mounting bracket. A few minutes with a file, and the constant vibration would cause failure within a day or two. You know a lot about truck maintenance for an infantry soldier. I know a lot about sabotage, detective. It's part of my training. But more importantly, Pamela would have had access to John's truck every day. She knew his schedule, his drinking habits, his route home. Sean stood up. Detective, I didn't kill Dennis Johns. but I think I know who did, and I think you're smart enough to figure it out if you look at the right evidence. As Sean walked out of the sheriff's department, he felt the satisfaction of a perfectly executed tactical maneuver. He'd given Detective Good everything he needed to shift the investigation toward Pamela while keeping his own team's involvement completely hidden. His phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. Package delivered to Franklin Fry. He's very interested in learning about Pamela's financial situation and her new communication with law enforcement. Sean smiled grimly. Pamela's co-conspirators were about to learn that she'd been planning to cut them out of the insurance money all along. Honor among thieves was about to become a liability. Now Sean just had to make sure Emma was protected when Pamela's carefully constructed world began to collapse around her. Chapter 9. Justice Served. 3 weeks later, Sean sat in family court watching his ex-wife's life unravel in real time. Detective Good's investigation had moved with stunning efficiency once he'd shifted focus to Pamela. The email exchanges had been verified through server records. The insurance policy and financial records painted a clear picture of motive. Most damning of all, forensic analysis of John's truck had revealed file marks on the brake lines consistent with deliberate sabotage. But the final nail in Pamela's coffin had come from Franklin Fry, John's cousin. Faced with evidence of Pamela's plan to keep the entire insurance payout for herself, Fry had made a deal with prosecutors, providing recordings of conversations where Pamela had discussed eliminating the Johns problem once she no longer needed Dennis. Sean watched Pamela sit at the defendant's table, her hands shaking as the prosecutor read the charges: conspiracy to commit child abuse, insurance fraud, and first-degree murder. Her defense attorney, a public defender who looked overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, kept glancing nervously at the evidence boxes stacked against the wall. Emma sat beside Sean, coloring quietly in a workbook. She'd been seeing Dr. Gray twice a week and was making remarkable progress. The nightmares had stopped, her bruises had healed, and she was beginning to trust that she was safe. She still didn't understand the full scope of what had happened, but she knew her mother had made bad choices that hurt people. "Daddy," Emma whispered, "why does Mommy look so sad?" Sean looked at his daughter, his brave, resilient, beautiful daughter who deserved so much better than the adults who were supposed to protect her. "Because she's learning that bad choices have consequences, sweetheart." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Rita Brown, reviewed the custody petition before her. Sean's lawyer, Major Rice, had prepared an ironclad case supported by medical records, psychological evaluations, and testimony from multiple witnesses. Given the criminal charges pending against Ms. Barr, Judge Brown said, and the clear evidence that the child was placed in danger due to the mother's actions, I'm granting full custody to the father. Ms. Barr's parental rights are suspended pending the outcome of her criminal trial. Sean felt Emma's small hand slip into his. "Does that mean I get to stay with you?" "Forever, sweetheart. You get to stay with me forever." As they left the courthouse, Sean's phone buzzed with messages from his team. "Oliver, congratulations. Well played." "Justin, Emma's college fund just got a significant anonymous donation, courtesy of some liquidated assets from John's blackmail operation." "Barry, heard Pamela pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. 25 to life." Sean smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he'd been carrying for months. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been surgically precise. That evening, as Emma played in their new apartment near Fort Bragg, Sean called Terrence Ash. "Heard you came out clean," Ash said. "Nicely done. Thanks for the intelligence. Couldn't have happened without it. What are your plans now?" Sean watched Emma arranging her stuffed animals for an elaborate tea party, her laughter filling the apartment with light and joy. "I'm thinking about taking early retirement," Sean said. "Emma's been through enough upheaval. She needs stability, normal life, a father who's present. You'd be good at the private sector. A lot of companies could use someone with your skills." "Maybe. But first, Emma and I are going to take a vacation. Somewhere with beaches and ice cream, and absolutely no one trying to hurt her. She's lucky to have you." Sean looked at his daughter, who was now carefully pouring imaginary tea for her stuffed elephant. "No," he said quietly. "I'm lucky to have her." 3 months later, Sean Hansen was officially retired from the Army and working as a security consultant for a private firm in Charlotte. Emma was enrolled in an excellent school, seeing Dr. Gray once a month, and had made 3 new best friends who knew nothing about her traumatic past. Pamela Barr was serving her sentence at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. Franklin Fry had received 15 years for conspiracy. Dennis Johns was buried in an unmarked grave in Tennessee, mourned by no one. Sean had learned something important during those dark months. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in the ability to destroy your enemies, but in the wisdom to protect what matters most. Emma had been through hell, but she'd emerged stronger, more resilient, and absolutely certain that her father would always be there to keep her safe. On a sunny Saturday morning, as Sean pushed Emma on her swing in their backyard, she looked up at him with those bright, intelligent eyes that mirrored his own. "Daddy, are you happy we're together?" Sean stopped the swing and knelt down to her level, looking into the face of the person who mattered more to him than anything else in the world. "Emma, being your father is the greatest honor of my life. Every single day with you is a gift." She threw her small arms around his neck and hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. Forever and always." As they walked back into their house, their safe, secure, peaceful house, Sean reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this moment. He'd served his country with honor, faced enemies on foreign battlefields, and survived betrayals that could have destroyed everything he cared about. But in the end, the most important mission of his life had been the simplest: protecting his daughter and giving her the chance to grow up happy, healthy, and safe. Mission accomplished. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.